Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, I'm Dr. Doreen Downing, and I'm a psychologist, and I host this podcast, Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. What I do here is invite guests who have some story about somewhere in their life where they feel like they didn't have a voice, and that could be way early in life, or it could be currently. And we're going to hear today from my friend Joey Chandler. And I know Joey because as a purpose coach, I went to him and I discovered so much about my purpose. But what Joey, I know I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute here, Joey, has been going through some major changes, personal insight. And I'm excited to have this idea of voice coming through in this very moment, in this time of life, rather than something that happened way back when and there's a trauma or some kind of challenges at school growing up. I mean, that may be true, but what it sounds like we're in for today is a treat about somebody who is discovering their true voice right here, right now. So Joey, I know you wrote a book, so I just want to mention that, Thrones of Wisdom, 99 Ways to Get Off the Pot While on the Pot. And that you do live here in Northern California, not too far away from me. So that's exciting that you and I have been able to see each other at networking events, and also the coaching, the marvelous coaching that you do. So I would like to recommend people to look you up, Joey Chandler. I guess it's joeychandler.com?
.net.
.net. Okay.
.net.
Hi, Joey. Welcome.
Hi.
And introduce yourself.
No, thank you so much. I'm so excited to do this call because so much of what I've been going through, I think you've been talking about forever. So I'm kind of catching up to you. So I am very, very excited to talk. As you said, I used to coach purpose, and I would talk purpose and why and values and all of these things. And now I describe myself as a core growth coach. I help people figure out who they are at their core and then how to grow that in their life. And the reason that for the change is that in January, I just got to a point where I just didn't have anything left. I was going through a separation, COVID, I was living alone, struggling with my business, just, a whole bunch of stuff. And it's not anything unique to me, given what everything is people are going through these days. But I just had this moment where I said, okay, I can't be anything besides me. I just don't have the energy to be anything else besides me. And I said, okay, well, if I can't be anybody else besides me, who am I and how can I be more of that? And that singular question has been driving my life for the past 6 months and completely changed my life because fortunately for my purpose work, I actually had a sense of who I was. And I just was able to just refine that over and over again and just build this foundation to where I'm like, okay, this is who I am. And I'm able to take steps and action. And the very best part about this whole approach is that on those days when I have nothing, when I get to the point where I have nothing left, because that does happen, I now just have this process. I can say, okay, who am I and how can I be more of that? And who I am is I say, I'm about love. And what love means to me is courage, connection, and commitment. Mm-hmm. And every morning now I wake up and I have some conversation with myself of like, how can I bring more courage, connection, or commitment to my life? And it is just really helping me move forward.
Well, it sounds like there was a moment, like a breakthrough moment. It was probably, like breakthrough moments often happen as a result of a series of previous moments, like a building collapsing just doesn't all of a sudden collapse when it has a good structure, but it's been, getting weaker and weaker and weaker until it just collapses. And I'm not saying that you had a collapse, but you had a breakthrough or some sort. Can you say a little bit more about that moment earlier this year?
It was the best word that I have to describe it was a surrendering moment.
Mhm.
I had, I just like, I had nothing left. And so I couldn't, I couldn't do anything else. And one thing that I was doing was, and I don't exactly remember the exact days. This wasn't in the movie, it will be all lined up, but in my, I don't know, in reality, I, I was writing a lot of copy for my website or some material, and the word love just kept coming up over and over again.
Mm.
And I had my, before I had done that, I had my purpose as being around freedom. But the way I look at stuff is that if the language is showing up over and over again, then it says something, there's something there to at least notice. And before, I had kind of always was able to resist the idea of love because it's come up before, but I was always had kind of like good reasons and could kind of work past it. But at that point, I said, I guess I'm love because I got nothing else. And I just surrendered into love. And it really, from that day, it went forward. And then, so it's been this surrendering and honestly a refinement. On my podcast that you're on, my Love Launch podcast, I interviewed a guy and he told me the story about how the Navy SEALs do things in sets of 3, because apparently when people are getting, shooting at you, you can remember 3 things, but 4 or 5 doesn't always work. And I used to say that my core or my purpose was around 5 things. And when he said that, I was like, okay, that's easier, 3 things. So I switched, I narrowed it down. It took a little bit of work. I narrowed down to connection, courage, and commitment. And turns out the Navy SEALs were right. It's easier to remember. And then I just keep surrendering and I keep letting go. If it's hard for me to do, I generally I try not to do it. I still catch myself. And I have a habit of trying to force things through things and get excited about stuff. But I'm building up more and more. If it's hard for me to do, if it takes work beyond me, I'm starting to, I question a little bit. And I usually can find a way that's just more aligned with who I am and just keep taking steps. I'm not perfect at it. I got a lot of work to do on that. But I'm more and more to the point where I can be like, okay, this is who I am. And you know what? This feels right. So I'm going to do that.
I like that feedback instantly. It feels right. So with courage, connection, and commitment, those 3, I guess you call them guidelines or
I call them drivers.
Drivers. Okay. Yep. And so you talk about courage and it seems like juxtapositioning it to something you don't want to do. So how do you know when you need to call on courage as opposed to saying, surrender, let go?
Good question. I think it's a little bit of a gut reaction. Courage, one of the really interesting things about this process, because I narrowed it down and now I'm thinking over and over again, what does courage mean to me? And what does commitment mean to me? I started exploring what courage means. And I realized that having courage, like to do something you may not want to do is one thing, but there's also, when you do something courageous, like you ask somebody out, or you do a bold step, or that feeling that you get after being courageous, like inside of being courageous, where it's a little bit nervous, a little bit scary, and you do it and it's awesome and all that. I love that feeling. So courage has become a feeling as much as a thing to do. Like I like it when I am courageous. Like the most loving and romantic and things I'm most proud of in my relationships were the times where I was courageous, where I said something, where I did something, or I apologized faster. Like those are the moments that I love. So courage is not just something I need to do in order to do something else. It's actually an experience that I like to have in my life.
Oh, I love that explanation. Thank you. In the sense of how we bring this back to voice, what you just described was speaking up or communicating something that might be difficult or something you really want, but afraid to ask for. And that sensation, it's a physical sensation I get. It's not, oh, I have to do that and like, oh, get your fists going and saying I'm courageous and trying to convince yourself, another C word, convince yourself. But I love the whole sense of an embodied sense of what courage feels like. There's a little bit of excitement. And, they do say fear creates the same physiological response as excitement. So it's you noticing, is there something like a yes in it? Does it feel like there is I don't know, there's something about taking that step toward and into the experience because it has a yes. And the surrender, it to me feels like what you're talking about. It's not a push, even though courage sounds like it's a pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's are you a skier at all?
No, but I know you are.
So there's a moment when you're jumping off a cliff. There's a moment when you can imagine you're approaching a jump or a cliff, and you get to a point where you can't stop. You can stop, but then you get to a point where you just don't have the time to stop. You would fall off even if you tried. And in that little second, that's the courage spot. That is the spot where it's like, oh, and it's scary, it's thrilling, it's all sorts of things, but it's awesome. And the interesting part is that the more I love that idea that you're talking about courage as a push. The more that I do this, the more that I grow my sense of who I am. I realize that I actually don't have to be, I can rely less on the pushing of courage. Because something, again, this is something that I've just recently started to explore. If you can imagine there's you have some challenge, there's something that you want to overcome. And your perspective of this thing is that it's really hard, to make a sales call or get up in front of a stage. And I think you probably addressed this, but if you could actually grow who you are, if you get a sense, okay, this is who I am, and then you practice being yourself in more places, you're going to grow who you are. The challenge of getting on the stage is the same size, but who you are gets bigger. So the perspective of the challenge gets smaller. It becomes more manageable. And while it may take a little bit of courage, it's not the courage that is so much that you can't do.
The white knuckling courage.
Yeah, you don't need that. You get to the point where courage is fun. Like courage is fun when you know you can do it. Right? When you know you can jump off that cliff and it's going to be great. You know that. But if you don't know that, it gets a little harder.
Well, the knowing I'm getting is more about connecting to the core. It sounds like that's your specific C is core. Yeah. And so connecting with your core and who you really truly are expands. I love that explanation of how you can move towards something that has the same amount of fear or anxiety or elements that you had before, but you've got more of you that enters into the arena.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's really amazing because it started to be like, oh, now I'm starting to say like, okay, I have this challenge that I want to do. I want to hit a certain number of sales. I want to speak in front of a certain number of people, whatever those challenges are. If I can't do it, rather than trying to force myself, I'm starting to think, okay, how can I grow in terms of my courage, connection, and commitment so that challenge becomes more manageable?
Yes, I get it. And the connection to the core means, for me, when I listen to you, and for listeners, that your core has a voice.
Yes,
don't
absolutely.
You think? Say more
absolutely.
About say more about that.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, and I also want to point out, like, this, I'm not talking about core values, and there's a point, because when I first started doing this, I was like, oh, I'm going to become a core values coach, and there's a lot of people searching for core values. So I was really excited. I was like, business. But I was talking to a friend of mine. She's like, you're not doing core values. And she made this really wonderful point. She said, there's a difference between who you are and what you value. And that difference is subtle, but it's really powerful. And what I've come to see, it's the difference between being in love and valuing love. And so I'm in the being in love stage. That's what I want. That's what I talk about. So who you are at your core has a very much a voice. And I think just like we like to be called our name, who we are at our core likes to be called the name a clear name. So when I say I'm about love, and what love means to me is courage, connection, and commitment, I'm able to tap into myself just at a deeper level, just like I would by calling you, because I can call you Doreen versus if I didn't know your name.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, I would say this is something that occurs to me right here. When you say I am about love, I would maybe take the about out and I am love.
I
It
am
feels
love.
a little more direct when we're talking about connection.
And this is the exact process of whittling down the
Uh-huh.
just the extra stuff. So I'll start saying I am love. Like that takes a little work for me. So I will work on that.
Well, let's go into it right here. What is the work? What do you notice about the work?
Yeah. Well, it's like, it sounds weird. I am love. Like, how does that work? And no, it really is. I am love. It sounds funny. Like I'm trying to imagine saying that. And I think it's going to take a little practice, but I will do it. I am love. My name is Joey Chandler, and I am love. And what love means to me is courage, connection, and commitment. Okay.
Yeah. So what I get is that you are dropping down and embodying. And as you do that, there's going to be even more revelations to you, I think. And that this is really good for people to see, is that the first hit is, kind of the hiccup. Whoops. Am I close? But if I say love, what is that? How do I expand what that really means in terms of a being state? So I think you're showing people right here the process of what it means to get closer to growing your core. If your core is love, I would say I love, it helps me think, well, what is my core? I get a lot of feedback about how warm I am. I am warm. I am warmth. And it just, it starts to radiate out in terms of what I love about being. Yeah, you're right. When I say I am warm, I mean, I'm sure there's more I could. In fact, I will be doing this. I will be inserting lots of different words to learn more about myself and what I can grow. But I am warm. I am courageous, because warmth helps me step and feel like I can radiate. And so you said courage, connection, and commitment. Say something about commitment now.
Yeah. I just want to put one point out, because people are probably thinking this. Actually, from all my purpose work on my website, there's actually a survey that will walk you through this process to help you find your words.
Uh-huh.
And it takes about 10 minutes. When you know the question, like just like you got to warmth really quick, when you know the prompts to ask, it's not very difficult, because who we are at our core is underneath the surface. Like you've known me for a long time. When I say I'm about love, that's not a shocker to you, I'm guessing.
Uh-uh.
Right. And so who we are is right under the surface, but we, just like I just did, like I am love, like is hard for me to say. We don't have training in how to express who we actually are.
Yes.
It's there, but we just don't practice it. Our parents, their parents, we don't practice it. It's vulnerable, but you go through that stage of just like anything, when you first start doing it, it's scary. It's you can fall down and stumble, and you kind of don't want to do it. It's that drawback. But the more that you do it, the more that you can practice. I can start to say I am love. Like I can start to say that now more quickly, because I've said I'm about love a million times.
Mm-hmm.
So commitment came to me. Actually, it's a relatively new word for me. It's been about the last month. I had contribution was the word before that. And about the same time where I released all that, I don't know if we talked about this in the before or now, but I had this huge release of fear. I just realized I had been afraid that I wasn't enough and that none of my programs were ever good enough and nothing I do is ever enough. All of those fears. And I just noticed how much fear I was just holding. And it was like this, whew. And I just had the sense like I am never enough. Like it's never about me. I don't know if anybody else has this experience, but for me, that I'm never enough, the way it shows up is I create program after program after program. I get about 3/4 of the way through, and then it's not good enough. I quit. And I can't even tell you how many PowerPoint slides I have, millions of practice slides, things I've been working on. And so when all that fear let go, the word I was saying, about the time I said, okay, in the morning, because I always repeat, I'm about love, and I am love. I'll say that now. And one day I said, I am courage, connection, and commitment. And I thought, two things happened immediately. I said, wait a minute, I'm about contribution. That's not right. But then I said, oh, but that feels so good.
Oh, there you go again. The feeling.
It was so like, I was like, wait a minute, contribution. And I'm like, oh, but that feels so good. There was something about the commitment. And I realized that contribution was, I had, again, the fear that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't enough, that I actually had to contribute for people to love me. Mm-hmm. I couldn't just be me. I couldn't just commit to being me. That was not enough. Mm-hmm. So I had to go, and contribution is an incredible word. Like, there's nothing, but then it brought me back actually to thinking of skiing and rock climbing, because there's things you do in sports that you like on rock climbing, you'll step onto a rock and there'll just be a little bit of a nub, and that little bit of a nub will hold you 100% if you commit to it 100%. But if you don't commit to it 100%, it won't hold you. If that makes sense, you'll slip off.
Yeah, I think I'm getting the idea of how the three are connected around finding and connecting to your core, and then committing to your core.
Yep.
It's not committing to being out in the world necessarily, or committing to other people, really. I mean, actually, first, it's committing to this core that's inside of you, so that the core, you are saying to the yes, you are saying yes to the core, and the core is hearing you. So this whole idea about the voice, it's like the I am love, I am warmth is radiating out because you have committed to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as I explore it more, and this is the beauty of having simple words, because now these words percolate in my brain, I start to have different definitions, and I can have conversations like this, and people tell me kind of different things, and I get different perspectives. And some people say, hey, why are you saying about? Why not just say I am love? Mm-hmm. And because I've committed to these words, I can have conversations. I know more about them. I know more about courage, connection, and commitment now than I did a week ago, and certainly more than a month ago, and way more than 6 months ago.
Yeah. Well,
and I was just saying that this is a perfect example of this conversation. Removing the about, getting that feedback, it opens up a whole new world. Like all of a sudden, I'm trying to imagine myself in front of 1,000 people at a big conference. Hi, I'm Joey Chandler, and I am love. And to be able to say that, like, it's going to take you something, but like that would be a powerful thing. And I'm saying, let me explain. This is what I mean by that, and then to go into it.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about also is the language of being is different than the language that we normally learn in school, and how we learn to talk and how we learn to communicate. You're taking us into a realm of being, and so that has a different, I think it's a different language, don't you think?
I'm curious, can you say some more about that? I haven't heard it described that way, but please.
Either have I. I'm just thinking that it's because my work is about finding voice, and the voice, if we're talking about the voice that comes from core, being. It's a whole different, my sense of I am warmth is different than I am about warmth. It just takes you more. It's a direct, as you've talked about so far today, it's a direct experience. That's what beingness is. And most of us don't talk from being. Most of us talk from about, or most of us talk about what we know and values. And so communication to me comes from at this deeper level of being. We're designing or developing, speaking from a whole new language, the language of beingness.
Absolutely. I mean, I find this so amazing because you are constantly growing in this state, because I'm literally here thinking, like, what does it mean that I am love? Like, I don't even know what that means. There's so much to talk about or, explore. Like, what if I am love? How would I live my life? Like, how, there's so many things. And that's experience of being incredibly grounded and completely realizing that I know almost next to nothing about who I am and what's really possible is a very, very common experience. In the past 6 months, I've been having this each time I let go of something. When I went from 5 words to 3 words, when I went from contribution to commitment, when I went from I'm about love to I am love, each one feels very, very secure and grounded up until the time that it's not, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I don't regret any of the time I spent with those 5 words. I don't regret any of the time I spent with contribution. I don't regret ever saying I'm about love.
Yeah.
But then once you kind of peel a little bit of an onion, all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is the new layer.
Yeah. Instead of, I get it. I am being love. I am in the state of beingness. And that is what you're looking at. It seems like that's what you're teaching today, is about how we arrive at being. And being is here now. It isn't in the past or in the future. It is so totally here. Ooh.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Joey, we're coming to the end, and I want to make sure that, again, you can guide people to how to find out more about you, because you are so exciting.
Thank you. I'm so bummed. I'm like, no, let's keep talking. The one thing I just want to point out is that we all have far more experience being who we think we should be rather than who we actually are.
Yeah. I
have a lifetime of, let's just say I have much more time to think about who I was. I have more time thinking about what it means to be I'm about love. And now I'm going to have to practice living in the world of I am love. Like I have new clarity now, but now I need practice. And I just want to put that out to people. Don't expect to just be able to be, especially in this world, immediately. Like it takes practice. And that's really what my work is about. If they go to joeychandler.net, there's a form they can fill out. And I run challenges on a monthly basis now. I call it the Core Growth Challenge, where we spend 5 days asking, who are you at your core, and how can you bring more of that to your life? And I also do coaching and the amazing part about this is the part that I'm most excited about, is that when you tap into who you are and you explore that, you simply can find solutions to problems faster. You're more confident, you're more creative, you have the courage to take action. And so especially if you're a leader, and because leaders right now are stressed, they're exhausted, they're overwhelmed. If you're in that space and you're responsible for leading, please get in touch with me, because we can help you figure out who you are, get grounded in who you are. And that's going to help you find solutions to the challenge that you have faster and with less stress.
Yes, how it overlaps with what I do in terms of finding your voice. It feels like the clarity comes from being curious, and then you find your own inner answers and you find your connection to this core, which is your being, and the strength of that then you bring to your voice. Your voice then becomes it, meaning
Absolutely.
your core is your voice. Oh, This is wonderful
Yeah, this was great.
to be dancing in the moment with you, Joey. Anytime. Let's keep doing this. And so again, I just want to appreciate you for what you've brought to me in your different stages of growth, and whatever those PowerPoints that you made were ones that I that I completed, and I will go back to your Joey Chandler what is it, net at
Yep.
joeychandler@net.com, because I want to see this new you, what you're offering again. Okay.
Yep. It will be very similar to what you experienced before. It's just it's just all about who you are at your core. But
yeah,
I'd be interested to see, like, it would be, and I will just say this for all the people that, because everyone should work with you as for a speech coach, and doing the work that I do, it makes you more coachable because you're not defending yourself as much.
Yeah. Well,
And
I
so
saw you displayed that today about how the aha wakes you up, and you love that sense of, oh, something new. Let me explore.
yeah. So thank you. This has been wonderful.
Great. Wonderful for me too, Joey. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person during interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.